Amazing moments within the seminar, because I did go out and find students, so we just kind of not randomly pick, educatedly pick, but it's amazing to me how often the student, without prompting, will actually deliver some messages that we've been trying to deliver in class. The things that they reflected on and learned on inside of co-op seminar took back to their co-op job and actually said, hey, that actually worked. Career fair again. Then we did a breakout section for those of you that are with 288 now, which is a little bit different than I've done in the past. So we took each department and kind of talked about unique things related to that department. Had the career fair. We did a career fair in the spring and in the fall. Typically, our bigger career fair is in the fall, which is not necessarily for bioengineers, a good thing. But typically, it's the bigger career fair because, as we'll see in a few moments, all the other departments go on their first co-op in the spring. Okay? It's also when most companies are looking to hire May graduates. So most companies in the September-October time frame is when they're looking to hire somebody that's graduating in the May of the next year. All right? We added this year, talking a little bit more about LinkedIn profiles, social media. Right now, kind of focus on something like GitHub for the CECS, but actually, you guys talk about from BE 101, kind of your all's little projects that you do. GitHub is a place that you can go and show your portfolios. So now there's an opportunity that you can now say, hey, if you want to see more about me, you want to see how I read or write, you can go create, whatever you call it, a GitHub account and show the kinds of things that you've done. It's historically used a lot for the computer people, because they will show that here's some programming I've done, but here's another great way to be able to show an employer what you do, how involved you are. Career fair, blah, blah, blah. Spring break, which is probably the most popular one of the series. Then this past week, what I'm calling an engineering career projections panel. I want to make sure that everyone understands there's other options besides being a pure engineer. So we have somebody from the business school come in, the law school this time. And I always try to find a mechanical or electrical engineer to come in and talk about becoming a professional engineer. Having a civil engineer, most of the civil engineers know they have to do that, but I try to get someone from a different department to come in and talk about that. My favorite topic of culture, ethics, and risk, because I do believe that it's something you need to start understanding very early in your career, your responsibilities as an engineer. The fact that you are a leader. The fact that, there's this concept of, did I cut a corner? Did I do something to save money? Of course I did. I drive the car I do because I don't drive the safest car on the road. I make a risk-balanced decision. So kind of that process to get you start thinking about that. I also kind of interject in there some of the things, the uncomfortable things you will have about being a leader too. A little bit around, things that people will do on leadership roles, on speak-up cultures. It's very important in my industry and will be in your industry on safety first, personal safety. Culture is culture. So that ability to tell someone they need to stop, whether it is stopping an unsafe practice that someone may get physically hurt, but also stopping an unsafe practice where it is damaging, to someone from a harassment standpoint, etc. All right? Talk a bit about the co-op report so you can get that right, hopefully. Navigating corporate culture. I mean, you're used to the University of Louisville culture. You're actually, most of the students, you're used to being a student culture. Life changes a lot, Here at school, weekly, probably maybe too often, you get a quiz back. You get that feedback that I learned the material about. Man, when you're in work, hopefully once a year, you get a performance review. So how do you actually create that process that you're getting that feedback how you're doing? All right, moving along. As I mentioned, BE is a little bit different from a co-op rotational standpoint, just to kind of realize how it all plays in together as we go through some of the data as we get out there. It's important to realize. Everyone else will do 4 semesters and go on their first co-op. So they'll go on their first co-op in the spring of their second year. At that time, the BE students are with us in BE 288 in the co-op seminar. So I'll focus now on you guys, the BEs. So you'll be in seminar with me in the spring. That gives us enough time to get out into the fall because the summer is just too short. Companies are too occupied to be really worried about placing co-ops in the summer. So it gives us a little time. It is a bit painful, I realize, for the students, because you'll see a lot of activity right now for a little while, then it'll go quiet, and then I have companies that start posting things again in the May, June timeframe. Some companies right now aren't interested in talking about fall co-ops. Some companies have already made their decision, so it just stretches things out. So you have your co-op again in your 4th year in the summer, and then your final co-op is in the spring, which is actually when you graduate. At the same time. All right? Just, from our standpoint, and yesterday we had a couple panelists come in, bioengineering companies come in to BE 101. And again, I don't pay these people, but I love the one comment from the lady from Evolva, from Mary from Evolva, is like, so she is a UK graduate, Evolva is in Lexington, and she loves to hire people from here. Okay? One key reason is the co-op process that people return. For her, the one and done is a real drain on her time. So she knows that you can come in, I'm going to train you up in that first semester. I can give you a better project come that second semester. It's not as if, this isn't a win for you too, right? At that point, I can give you a better project because I know your skills. I know your weaknesses, and I can help you work on those too. The third semester, really in your guys' scenario, you are an engineer, right? So the third semester, I can give you a really solid, meaty project. So we're intending is that you go to the same employer all 3 times. It's not to say, and I'm going to now change words to internship, it's not to say you can't do an internship. Internships are typically one and done. All right? NASA does internships, they don't do co-ops. Some of the companies we partner with are a little bit more internship based than they are co-op based. What they do is give you preferential treatment to apply for a co-op in the next rotation. Right? And at least from talking to some of you guys, at least some of you all think your all's academic curriculum is pretty tough. I also encourage you, man, if you get a co-op, you should stay on it, because you know what? You don't want to be bothering trying to figure out applying for things. It's a time suck, right? Of just applying for another job and finding the next one. Okay? That is just, in case you haven't kind of seen it, that's kind of the schedule for the current students that are with me at 288. At the end of the day, when you graduate from here at the end of 4 years with your BS degree, you have 50 weeks of work experience. That's invaluable, Entry-level job, you read that posting, what's it say? Oh, it's an entry-level job, that must be me. Experience, no experience required. Didn't tell me about your experience. Well, now you can. I thought yesterday in the seminar, Evolva is not really, some of these companies we'll talk about, they're not really hiring permanent employees. However, they help them find that next job. Okay, so it's a bit of a chess match at times. I can't guarantee a co-op, I'd love to. I'd love that you could use my resume. I would actually get tickled pink if I could go in and interview for you. But believe it or not, they won't interview you. I can't guarantee it. You have to earn it. All right? A couple things I'm just going to kind of go into. First, talk about speed in general. All right? So this is sheer number of people that go on co-ops every semester from whenever 2000 until last semester. You might notice something. It's going up quick. Right? So nominally 10, 15 years ago, we averaged on, about 170 if you look at that. Well, I mean, some rough numbers here. Then we kind of bumped up a little bit, under 250. And now we're doing about 370 a semester. In 2015 and 2014, we put 25% more students on co-op every semester. That's all departments. But it does impact you. All right? And so Tom Raymer, who's the admissions director for SPEED, a year ago, so one way they measure, they predict how many students are going to show up from high school. This is just to scare the faculty, so students don't have to worry about this one. A year ago, they had 380 people that had either signed up for orientation in the summer or assigned housing. It's a solid predictor they're going to come. This year, on the 23rd, a couple days ago, they had 470. So it's up 90. and the number of students that potentially will come to SPE. Last year, I think they were at 380 and 495, 500 high school students actually came. So growth seems to continue. All right, by departments, and I apologize, as I was throwing these slides together, I took two different data sources, and so if you can find that my data is it's off by 4 or 5 between these two, I apologize. This is by department. I'll focus on BE in a moment. I'll just do BE in a moment. But this goes by department. Each of the 7 departments are in one of my stacked bars here. You see fairly consistent growth as you go across there. CECS and Bio probably, and chemical engineers have probably grown a bit the most. I remain, from a co-op standpoint, well, I'm just looking out supply and demand. And hey, to be honest with you, I'm agnostic on whatever engineering degree you go for. I look for your passions, you know, and we'll follow your dreams. You know, so don't take anything I say about negative or positive about any other department. I'm always sold, right now, it's cyclical civil engineers I'm sold out of. I turn down civil engineer companies when they call us. IEs, were typically, I'll be in demand. I will not be able to meet the market demand for IEs. In the state of Kentucky, I won't be able to meet the demand for double E's, but in Louisville, there's not a lot of there's not as much double E demand. So far, with mechanical, which is the biggest group, obviously, that we always have up in here, mechanical engineering, we're kind of keeping pace with the growth. But that growth in mechanical engineering also has an impact on you guys, because one of the good news points about your all's program is, you know, the feedback I get is that you guys are engineers first. You know, the people, even though, you know, there's other departments like this that often become, my words, more scientists than engineers, and so you have that solid mechanical engineering background, but as mechanical engineering grows, there's also that availability that starts shrinking from your all standpoint, which is why I showed some of these slides up in here. By rotation, it's probably more interesting to me than it is to you, but you really can see in here, so this is first co-op, second co-op, third co-op, okay? So my big first co-ops are always in the spring, right? You also see that as you look at my data, it says, wow, why is that so noisy? And it's really kind of noisy because you go for a semester, I have a peak of 100 people, well, those 100 people are going to show up every other semester, right? It's not going to increase in a nice smooth curve. All right, and then you see your guys, you all as bioengineers, a bigger peak in the fall. One important concept of this one for me is kind of the follow-on effects of what we're doing is I have a bigger, people that are in 288, you wouldn't know this because you only get to do 288 once, but my 288 class for non-bioengineers in the spring is growing. Got 120 students in bioengineering in 288 now, everybody sits together. And it has a significant increase from previous years. So I have more students that you never want to be looking for your first co-op in the summer. That's not where you want to be. So I have an increase there in students in that looking for co-ops in the summer. And we also looked at, we're seeing an increase for a number of students outside of bioengineering looking for fall. So these are people that are basically off their flight plan. All right? By state, the relevance of this will come through as we kind of see as we go into the future slides here. So Kentucky's my big blue blob here. I probably should change that to red or something instead of a big blue blob for Kentucky. You see the vast majority of our co-ops stay in Kentucky, followed by Indiana, and it's not really even close when you look at that, right? It's Kentucky. Followed by Indiana, Ohio, and I'll just put everybody else in there as other. All right? Who cares about all that? Let's talk about bioengineering. So since time began, since before I was here at least, somebody can correct me with better historical knowledge, but as far as I can tell, the first co-ops with bioengineering, as bioengineers went out in the fall of 2007. All right, I got to shake my head, good. Whew. All right, so you can see we trended for a long time, kind of in that 10 to 15 space, and this, ooh, man, suddenly we got popular in 2009. Continued that, and actually see pretty significant popularity there in the end. The colors for everybody but the summer of 2016 is whether you're in your first, second, or third co-op. Probably not as important to you guys as the audience, but it does kind of show some trends for us of how things happen. The unfortunate one is in the summer of 2016, there's the size of this little guy up here, which are the students that are not placed. And these are all students looking for their second co-op. I've had a number of companies that have scaled back on their co-op program. We'll see a couple, I'll go through kind of a leaderboard of companies in a couple different ways of looking at companies. Boston Scientific has scaled back. Zimmer Biomet has scaled back. Some from a while back that have scaled back include Brown Cancer Center. You know, a lot of companies are in this space. I mean, the really cool news about what you guys are in, I mean, it is cutting edge. Of course, the really cool news about being on the cutting edge is blood happens. You know, you're on the cutting edge, and so things are moving and can move quickly. Right? So I do have currently about 9 students looking for a summer co-op. All right, now I'm going to focus at various times. There's reasons that I've shrunk and expanded the time zone here on years, and sometimes it's just for the visual to kind of focus in there. But I love data, as you might be able to tell. All right, from 2007, so from the beginning of time now for bioengineering, we've had 566 co-op semesters. That's pretty significant. So if you go on co-op twice a year, that counts as 2, right? So at the end of the time when you graduate, you'll be 3 data points in this, right? 100 different companies as I go through for bioengineers. This is just bioengineering data. Probably one of the best departments for international co-ops so far. And a lot of that is through some of the work of this partnership with the Helmholtz Institute. You'll see Germany even appear on your leaderboard there of locations. I call them a state, I hope they don't mind. 17 different states. Now remember my earlier slide, how big Kentucky was for overall? For bioengineering, it shrinks to about 50%. All the other departments are above 70%. I just want you guys to kind of realize that piece of reality. The standard joke you guys hear that you don't like in 288, I'm sure, is, you know, my kids went through high school in Chicago, so my standard joke to them was, you know, think about what you want to do when you grow up, and when you're doing that, think about where you want to live. Because you know what? If you want to be an oceanographer and live in Chicago, good luck with that. Same works for Louisville. You know, I think that the panel there was very good at talking about, hey, if you want to follow your dreams, you might have to move. For whatever reasons, personally, I was kind of bitten by process control and process control of refineries and distillation columns. I moved. I was lucky enough to be able to manage my career that the family lived for about 19 years in Chicago. I traveled a lot, and I knew that I would be living in Houston sometime. I mean, when my wife and I left Tennessee, we moved to New Jersey. You know, we looked at that. My wife did not want to move to New Jersey because probably all those things you kind of think about New Jersey. But the boss at the time said, well, bring her on up and have a look at parts of New Jersey. It's quite pretty. And unfortunately, we were in that because that's where Exxon's research center was at the time. We lived there for a couple of years, moved to Australia for about 3 years, back to beautiful Baytown, Texas for a couple of years, then Chicago for almost 20 years, and I was able to delay my move back to Houston with an excuse of kids in high school, but that gradually wore itself out, and then back to Houston. And part of that is kind of following what work you want to do. I mean, there is jobs in engineering that are perfectly wherever your passion is, you know. It's really what I kind of would stress to you more than anything. And that's what an employer is looking for too. I want to know about your passions. Why you want my job. Not just any job, but why do you want my job? And how are you going to get there? And when I look at my career, I'll often talk to people about, you got to look for where you get your adrenaline rush. I spent a fair amount of time in operations, and my wife is my best observer. You know, she would comment that when I said, you know, I think I'm going to switch jobs and go do this, and she said, yeah, it's about time you get out of operations. And then after a little while, you know, in an office building, and I'd be saying, yeah, I'm looking at this, and she says, yeah, she would notice, yeah, you need to get back out and get your adrenaline fix by seeing valves move and plants and smell that stuff and see the dirt and rust. You have to get back out there. I know people that We're terrible at being in plant operations, and I think it's something that some of you guys will learn on co-op. I mean, there's a stress level. It's either you love it or hate it. I mean, there's nothing negative about it. Project management's another one of those. That's, man, some people just can't, that attention to detail. I used to watch a lot of, had a group that we'd go and watch football games with, and we'd go out. One of the very first times when the ESPN zone opened in Chicago, and if you've ever been there, there's like 8,000 billion TV screens up there with every football game known to mankind going on at the same time. The project manager that I traveled with, that would go there, he could tell you about what's going on in each one of those games. Another guy that I worked with, who actually was a football quarterback through college, could tell you what was going on in one game. Because that was kind of how he focused. What he was interested in was being able to pick out. So he's a detail kind of there person. You got to figure out where your strengths are there, and kind of what drives your adrenaline. Sorry, we digress. In Louisville, only about 45% co-ops. I'm focused today on co-ops, permanent jobs in Louisville. I mean, we place probably 2 or 3 people a year into bioengineering. All right. Downside, supply continues to exceed my demand from employers. My rough count would be about 10% of the bios go on co-ops that one would actually say isn't really a bioengineering co-op. Or mainly, you guys come back and tell me, but I can also figure that out. I put bios at what I would consider civil engineering companies, bios probably for my current crop of 288, somewhere in the late June, early July time frame, we'll have a conversation. Do you want me to try to sell you as a mechanical or an industrial engineer? I think you guys have the skill set and background to be there. You know, and also, fun data point, for the first time ever earlier this week, I got a call from a biomedical company that I'd never heard of, and it's not in Louisville, wanting to attract one, said, hey, we've heard good things about your house program. We'd like to set up a co-op program with you guys. So the word is getting out there. So hopefully that will change. Less than a 2.9 GPA, it becomes difficult, right? Even if you tell me you'll move anywhere, be anywhere. If I'm out in California, I can hire a bioengineer from down the street. So I'm going to do that more than likely. Now I look at that, I'll go to chemical engineering for a moment. Right now the oil industry is in the toilet, don't get me wrong with the price of a barrel of oil, but historically I couldn't place a co-op down there more than likely with without a 3.2 or above, but no problem getting you a permanent job. It's just a difference of how I'm going to look at you as an employer, right? If I'm sitting in Houston and I can hire a co-op from Rice, Texas A&M, I'm going that route. Why would I move, and even if I'm not going to pay for it, I'm not going to take the risk of moving you down there for a co-op. All right? So just in my last bullet there, I'm about up 34%. If I look at it in simple numbers, when I first came here in 2014, I had about 30 BEs looking for their first co-op. 2015, it went to 40. This year, it's about 50. So each year it has continued to increase. Stressing the system. And yeah. So this slide is from 2007. So since the beginning of time, this is all my co-ops. So it goes, oops, back to your 566 number. There's some data cleanup in here, and I'm sure you can find there's still some errors in here. As companies consolidate, split apart, sometimes we get it right in how we kind of assign there. So a couple things I'm trying to make sure you kind of see here. Now Johnson & Johnson is pretty much lumped together. Every time I look, I see another part of Johnson & Johnson that's not in that number. It is a leaderboard. We can look at it in different ways. It's data. I can sort it however you want. But between them, Kentucky Spinal Cord and Cook Medical, real strong demand from there. As I mentioned, Brown Cancer Center is kind of up there on the leaderboard. We haven't placed anyone there for 2 years. We'll show that in a different slide in a different way, just to kind of give that feel of things kind of coming and going. a lot of U of L in here in different ways with different names. I did not combine those intentionally, except I have started kind of creating a U of L bioengineering group, you know, for if you work in Dr. Steinbeck's or someone else's lab, that you'd simply appear in that kind of grouping, all right, versus every lab being different. We try all kinds of places. It's not unique to bio that I make. It's one amazing part to me. And when I started this job is when I make those cold calls to companies. I figured they'd be hanging up on me fairly quickly, but they don't. We have a good conversation. There's no guarantee. I have my own cynical bets in my mind as to whether I ever hear back from that company again. Most companies come across quite enthusiastic, quite interested. They want to find ways to partner, but obviously it takes time, sometimes money on their part. Okay? But you see some really kind of big ones in here that aren't planning, design, and construction. It's 7 students there. That has nothing to do with bioengineering. General Electric was not a bioengineering related co-op. HB Molding has not been bio-related. I'm just going to kind of stay over here in the first one over on this side over here. So there are a number of them. Outsec is not bio-related. There are a number of them that sit in there. Co-op remains mandatory. We'll do our best to find something that's close related. We obviously want it to be engineering related. We'll also offer some latitude depending on kind of if you can really establish that this is my career goal, which is something that is not, you know, has engineering in it, to understand whether we can kind of be flexible on the co-op. But it has to be a kind of a solid plan of where you're going. Slightly different view, 3 or more co-ops since 2012. What I really wanted to kind of focus here is kind of back to some of those comments. Boston Scientific, we're doing quite well. Suddenly they stopped taking co-ops. They redesigned their co-op program. Right? Boston Scientific is up here too, if I can figure out where they are. No, not Boston Scientific. Who was I looking for? Brown Cancer Center, here we go. You know, co-ops up through summer 2014, and then zeros. They lost funding. It's nothing personal. Right? Sometimes it is personal. When I first got here, there was a company very close to the city of Louisville that had stopped taking and said, we're not going to take co-ops. Dr. Kent and I worked on it a bit. They're not going to take co-ops from Louisville anymore. They're going to take co-ops from Cincinnati and Purdue. The co-op program exists because of you guys. Right? It's your legacy. Partially it exists because the fact that the previous co-op students did a good job, represented themselves, represented the university, represent the bioengineering department well. It's easy to say no. We do have co-ops going back to that company now. So that's all good news. Is there a question?
I'm just looking at that.
No worries. So it kind of comes and goes. There's companies that I've been pushing on for a long time. I will still try. I have a regular, what I refer to as a tickle file, which just basically kind of goes through, okay, I haven't bothered that guy for a while, I send him out. From a back office standpoint with resumes, we have job postings out there. Now, in one way you look, oh look, there's thousands of job postings for bioengineers. I do my best to collect them. I still send resumes to the Brown Cancer Center. I'm going to roll those dice. If it's 1 in 1,000, I'm still rolling them for you. You know? Good news is, email's free. I send it off to them. They kindly write back. They've given up actually writing back, I think. Thanks, but no, we don't have any funding. But companies, it is a way also to kind of open up because I can show the quality of student that is here. It's a way I can sell by sending them a resume packet. So I keep down that path as best we can on all the companies. But you can see it also drops off. I mean, unfortunately for bioengineering, I don't have the LG&E, General Electric of the world. LG&E takes about 2 dozen co-ops from us for every semester. GE about the same, Lawrence Park. Okay? I don't have kind of that big volume. But you guys get great support. Actually, Kentucky Spinal Cord, 4 and 5 co-ops there every semester recently. They've been a big supporter, quite understands what we can do, and what your students can do. All right. This is just kind of, we looked at before, the number of students, so 2012 to 2016, about 50% in Kentucky, 28% in Indiana. I got another slide we'll show here in a minute about kind of hot spots, if you will, for bioengineers. So really, when you think about Indiana, you start thinking about, Cook Medical did in that area of Bloomington, Indiana, Warsaw, Indiana, huge growth up in there. Okay, it's not that far off. Chicago, another big location. Indianapolis. City-wise, 42% Louisville. These are all co-op stuff. It drops off fairly quickly. What I'm trying to show here, in case actually it makes sense to me, you never know how a table looks to somebody else. These are semesters, right? I didn't go down to the onesies and twosies. This total here makes up 95%. So 95% of your co-ops ended up in those places. 91% ended up in these cities. In 2015, 105 kids went out on 125 co-op semesters. You guys actually have kind of one advantage. One of my other big pushbacks is starting to come for co-op. Is an unintended consequence of the Affordable Care Act. You guys are, in case you're ever asked, considered temporary employees, seasonal workers. You start getting into issues, especially on the other departments, because they will be on co-op in 2 semesters in the same year, as you go above a threshold to go from a temporary seasonal to a full-time. If that comes up, let me know. There's other ways I can show them to interpret some stuff. I remain not a lawyer, but I can show them how people interpret it. Okay? 14 co-op semesters in 2015 would not have been considered BE type of co-ops. 50 students, BE only major, under 70%. This is just 2015 data, some data I pulled together for another presentation. But you can kind of see where things are going, kind of your leaderboard. This is again, this list of companies here makes up 70% of co-ops. 96% were in these handful of states. I made Germany a state. 92% in these cities. For a city, I don't get real creative here. I use whatever their postal address is. So Simpsonville is not Louisville. Jeffersonville is not Louisville. They're individual cities. Okay? Then, it's kind of funny because yesterday in BE 101, a gentleman that came from US WorldMed showed this slide. It's like, oh man, hopefully there's not a whole lot. I'm glad there's not a lot of people in here saying, hey, we just stole this slide. This data is actually off of LinkedIn. It's a little bit dated of 2012. I couldn't find anything more, but it kind of gives that picture of data analyzed from LinkedIn for people that claim they're working in biotechnology. Right? It doesn't mean they're a bioengineer or a biomedical engineer. It doesn't mean they're an engineer. They're working in biotech, so biologists, chemists, et cetera, et cetera. And really what you see in this slide is kind of, you see, well, one that, in this case, maybe it's thank God for West Virginia and South Carolina, but we're not whites. We're just a very light shade of pink here. But we're certainly not purple with California and Massachusetts. So you see your real hot spots, your growth areas, and this space is not here. Okay? Indiana gets a slightly darker shade, and that's really a lot of that is due to the Warsaw, Bloomington, Indianapolis kind of corridor through there. Illinois is a little bit darker. That's Chicago. It's not Peoria. It's Chicago. Right? I guess the good news about your all's degree is you end up in cities versus I always end up at a refinery. If it wasn't an armpit before the refinery got there, it was an armpit afterwards. All right? City-wise, this kind of shows, again, those corridors, but this focus, so we kind of did states here, a little more kind of at the city space. You know, Boston, my son lives in Boston. You know, I was saying, hey, one time I said to him, I was like, man, I'm having a rough time placing bioengineers. He was like flummoxed by this. He says, my goodness, I walked down in Cambridge and every other building. It's a friggin' biotechnology company. Again, we got to get you guys into that space. Obviously, there's going to be huge competition there because MIT and Harvard and however many other universities that are in Boston are there. But there's no reason to stop. A lot of growth there. The only way that kind of surprises me New York, but I can't figure out, you know, it's always hard to tell how somebody answered that question. If they work in a hospital, did they suddenly get in there? San Francisco, Los Angeles area, your big California draws. And then historically, Minneapolis has always been a big draw. Usually it's been East Coast, West Coast, Minneapolis. But you also see that the Indianapolis area shows up in there, Atlanta, Houston. A lot of times, anytime you see that big center or medical center, draw stuff in. That's all I got. Questions?
You haven't had average salary for co-op or anything like that?
Yes. The average, off the top of my head, but it's posted out on our window out there, is for bios, the range